So Fly Me to the Moon is the latest feature film from Apple TV Plus, who have worked in conjunction with Sony Pictures to distribute this movie. It actually did get a theatrical release. It will eventually make its way to the Apple TV Plus streaming service, but this is something that they've done with a lot of their movies like Napoleon, Argyle, all these things that they've come out with over the past year or so. They're doing sort of traditional theatrical runs before it eventually debuts on streaming. But I wanted to go see this in theaters this past weekend. But this is a movie that's been in development for a couple of years now. Initially, Chris Evans was attached to star. He was going to be playing opposite Scarlett Johansson, but he had to drop out due to scheduling. They found Channing Tatum to come in and take over his part. Also, Jason Bateman was going to originally direct this movie, but they couldn't reach, I think, a creative point where they agreed on what the story was going to be. So they brought in Greg Berlanti to direct this movie, which I now believe is his second feature film after Love, Simon, maybe his second or third. But Greg Berlanti has had a hugely successful career in TV, produced all of those CW superhero shows, The Flash, Arrow, so on and so forth. One of the most prolific and successful television producers of the 21st century. But this movie, Fly Me to the Moon, it's essentially taking place in the 1960s. It's about the space race between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and it focuses on a government official played by Woody Harrelson who brings in this marketing PR specialist called Kelly Jones. Her name is Kelly Jones. That's the Scarlett Johansson character, and he brings her in basically to win back the public trust about this moon mission that NASA is trying to undergo. They're trying to continue to win the space race against the Soviet Union, but I think a lot of people in the country at that time became very disillusioned with how much money was being spent, how much time and effort was being spent on this space race when there were already these other big issues happening within the country. But she was brought in to try to improve their public image. But in addition to that, he hired her to essentially stage a fake backup moon landing mission that they would film on a film set, and that they would basically broadcast in case the real moon mission and the real space mission did not go as planned. Now, this isn't technically based on a true story, but there have been a lot of conspiracy theories about things like this happening. The Kelly Jones character is based on a character who was brought on to improve NASA's public image, but it was a man instead of a female. And there's also been a lot of speculation about, Stanley Kubrick filming the space mission on the Apollo 11 moon landing, which they reference him in this movie quite often here. But none of those things can necessarily be proven at this point. But that's what this is about. And ultimately, her character meets the Cole Davis character played by Channing Tatum. He's one of the directors of NASA, and he's responsible for the Apollo 11 launch. And so this movie, in totality, it's fine. It's a pretty decent, solid movie. When it's trying to be a rom-com, I actually really like it. When it leans into that, and when you lean into the relationship between Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum, who have pretty decent chemistry with each other, the movie works. But they obviously, I think, have a contentious relationship because she's doing something that he doesn't approve of, and he's very much focused on the mission, but she's coming in and she's doing all of this marketing and PR spin. It's distracting him. It's not genuine. She's kind of a scammer. She's had a history of doing some potential scams in her life. So they have a lot of disagreements amongst their relationship. And that stuff works for me. But there's also a completely different side of this movie where it does focus a lot on this backup sort of fake moon landing mission that they're trying to stage, essentially. And in reality, the entire second half of the movie becomes that. And we kind of lose sight of the romance that develops between these two. And that stuff was still interesting, but I think that it just takes away and lacks focus to make this a truly successful movie. It's kind of trying to do too many things at the same time, where it's like, on one hand, trying to be this romantic comedy and develop this chemistry between these two, but at the same time, we're also like talking about this conspiracy, this government plan to launch this fake moon landing, and all of the stuff that goes behind that, the planning, the directors that they have to hire, the backups, the extras, the sets that they have to build. It's a really elaborate plan. It's almost like a heist. We're trying to get away with something and trying to trick the entire world that this thing is real when in reality it's not. And so it's just kind of trying to do, I think, a few too many things, and that makes the movie really overly long. It's about 132 minutes. And if we're going to be a rom-com, it does not need to really be that long if we really focused in. But I will say, outside of all that stuff, I love the NASA stuff that they included here. It looks really, really great. It certainly feels like we were truly at NASA. We were truly in Florida. It felt very accurate of the time period. They certainly spent a lot of money on this movie. $100 million is the reported budget. They are going to have a really tough time making that back, but it certainly looks the part. And I think in an era where most streaming big budget movies have a terrible look, and they have a bunch of CGI sludge, and they just don't look great. This is one of the rare exceptions where you can tell that Apple, they kind of care about that final quality of how a movie looks, where, you know, I don't want to point out any particular streaming service, but a few films have come out and they look just completely fake and sound stagey and unbelievable. Red Notice, things like that, you know, Gray Man, you know, these are movies that have all the money behind them, but they don't look like they cost 5 cents. And so this is not one of those examples. It actually looks pretty good. And I think that it's a pretty enjoyable theater experience too. You know, I think a lot of people will probably discover it on Apple TV Plus, but if you did indeed go to see this at the theaters, I don't think it's a bad time. It's a nice Friday night day movie, ultimately, is what it is. And that's totally fine, totally serviceable with some decent performances, pretty decent direction, a solid and interesting story.
Kelly Jones
just kind of
like,
needed a little bit more focus. I think,
sounds
to
like a
truly
black
be
name
successful.
to me. Kelly Jones is like, oh wait, is this about black people? No. I've been wanting,
it definitely does.
I think like Scarlett Johansson to continue to like take roles like this for some reason. I don't know. We've just seen her as Black Widow so much. I'm like, yes, do Marriage Story. Go do Fly Me to the Moon. Go do all these other things. Because before that, you were like, she was in like Lucy, and unfortunately, she was in Ghost in the Shell. I mean, whatever the hell that is. Don't do that ever again. But she was having fun before that. Now I'm like, oh yeah, go have more fun. So I'm glad to see her and stuff like this, man. But yeah, still can't wait to check it out. It sounds like it's still up my alley, even though it's just okay. I can't wait to check it out soon.
Indeed. Well, folks, those are all of our thoughts on the brand new Apple TV Plus film, Fly Me to the Moon. If you've checked this out, hit us up and let us know what you think.